All right, welcome back once again, everybody. I'm Don Seifer. It's the Dr. Tree Fruit and Don podcast. It is June 6th, 2025. I'm here with Dr. Carrie Peters. Say hi, Carrie.
Hi there.
And Dr. Greg Krawcheck. Say hi, Greg.
Hello.
And Carrie, you were going to give us an update on kind of what to expect over the next couple days, but also a summary of May.
Yeah. It's been an interesting season so far. As I'm reminded every year, no two seasons are alike, and 2025 is its own unique beast. So first, just as far as how the season started, it started fairly dry, and it was dry enough where we had excellent conditions for powdery mildew. So there's quite a bit of powdery mildew showing up out there. And so we had the dry weather through the end of May. And then even in April, when we had during bloom, we did have some good fire blight infection periods. So where we had rainfall or rain events that triggered the fire blight infection. So it was dry, so great powdery mildew, but we also had wetting events, which triggered for fire blight. And then we entered the month of May, where I just did a quick count for Adams County on our newer station, and we only had 13 days in the month of May that did not have measurable precipitation. So 13 out of 31, that's how many dry days. The rest of them were all had measurable precipitation. And the grand total for us in Adams here in Biglerville at Freck was 9.02 inches of rain. And so I'm not sure. Dawn, I think you guys in Berks were seeing something similar for the month. You kind of had similar bursts of activity, different than us, I think. But I think you still ended up with quite a bit of rain too for the month. And so with that and May was a good month for diseases. It was still strong for scab at the start. During petal fall, that's when apple blotch or Marsanina blotch came through. So we had excellent temperatures. It wasn't too cold. We did have some cooler days, but it was warm, unfortunately, at the right or wrong times, depending on how you looked at it. Right now, I will say at the beginning of June, I have a lot of interesting things popping up in the orchard. Interesting fire blight. I'm going to talk about some fire blight management strategies as people move forward. But I'm also seeing some odd things on leaves in apple trees that have perplexed me. So I'm going to be following that. So that could be early signs of Marsanina blotch or maybe another leaf disease. The fruit so far look okay. If you are someone who has struggled with southern blight, and I'm looking at you, Adams County, because so far Adams County is its own issue for southern blight. But just as a heads up for folks, because of how much rain we had and we had good temperatures in the latter half of the month, please check your bud 9 and bud 10 trees because those are rootstocks that are most vulnerable to southern blight, which is a soil-borne disease. And we had good soil moisture conditions, and it was warm enough, I think, to be wreak some havoc. I'm actually monitoring a site at Freck where there are some trees that look a little off, and they're on bud 9 and bud 10. So it's just a word to the wise. So anyway, I don't want to drag this on too long, so I'm just going to jump in as far as what people need to be thinking about right now. Right now, bitter rot should be on your mind. It is warm, it's hot. These are perfect conditions for bitter rot spores to be happy to cause infection when rain is going to be present. So, rain is in the forecast. I had an update go out yesterday saying bitter rot risk was going to be for the 6th and 7th. I'm going to shift that to say 6th through the 10th because I was looking at the radar and there is a system coming across the state. It's like in Pittsburgh right now, or maybe just east of Pittsburgh, and it looks pretty gnarly. So some reds or some yellows, some oranges coming through. So significant rainfall is in store for some folks. So with that said, and there's going to be chance of rain or significant chance of rain for the next 3 or 4 days. So I want folks to be on alert because bitter rot is one of these pathogens that you have to have the fungicide on the fruit before the rain event because that fungicide, it needs to be there in order to come in. When the spore lands on the fruit, it needs to come in contact with that fungicide in order for it to be controlled. If the fungicide isn't there, you are increasing your risk of having bitter rot infection. But remember with bitter rot, you do not see the infection until much later because when it penetrates the skin and anchors in and it solidifies its infection, it goes to sleep, it goes dormant, and there's nothing you can do. Fungicides only work on germinating spores and stuff that's growing. So please make sure you have fungicides on the fruit ahead of time. Once you see symptoms, which will occur sometime later in the season, it's too late to do anything. So now is the time for prevention. So as far as what you should be applying right now, Captan is a must. And preferably tank mix Captan with something like a Provia, which is a frat group 7. That has a 30-day PHI, which is good for right now because we should be sort of, quite a bit of ways out from our pre-harvest intervals or from our harvest time. Omega 500F or Orbis 4F, those are both fluazanam products. These are excellent products too. It's frat group 29. These products have a 28-day pre-harvest interval or PHI. So Aprovia and Omega, these are the products I'd recommend using right now just because of the lengthy pre-harvest interval. However, other options that are in your toolbox are Flynn Extra, which is frat group 11. That is a 14-day pre-harvest interval. Luna Sensation, which is frat group 7 and 11. That's 14-day pre-harvest. And then finally Maravon, which is frat group 7 and 11. And that is a 0-day pre-harvest. Just as a reminder to keep in mind of the Frac 7s you applied during the early part of the season for management, for disease management, because according to the label, you have a max of 4 Frac 7 sprays a season and 4 Frac 11s. So please be judicious with how you are rotating these chemicals. And also, I just want to give a shout out to anyone who is storing fruit for a period of time or who will be sending their fruit to a packer, which will then have their fruit being stored for a period of time, to save Maravon as a last spray or near the harvest spray, because that works really good, not only for controlling right there in the moment of time, but also gives some longevity for control and storage. As far as organic unfortunately is limited. Sulfur is your best bet, but I am aware of the issue with sulfur with regards to being applied when it's 80 degrees or warmer. It can cause fruit russeting. I think some cultivars are more sensitive than others because I've used sulfur all season and I have not seen problems on the cultivars I have used. But with that said, I do know that all cultivars aren't created equal when it comes to sensitivity to certain chemicals such as sulfur. So be mindful of sulfur usage, but that is the strongest product. You could also use Serenade ASO or Serenade Opti, double nickel LC or OSO 5% SC. We have seen very modest control with these products, but with these products, you need to be putting them on frequently because they get washed off. So just be mindful of the frequency and the intervals that you will be applying these products. And then finally, I will also give a shout out for Regalia. This is a plant extract. We have done a little bit of trialing with Regalia, and I do like this product, but it's best not by itself. It's best when tank mixed with something else. You can use it in the conventional system. You could throw it in your tank mix if you're using, say, Omega and Captain. Go ahead and throw in Regalia. Regalia thickens the plant cell walls. So I do see some utility in using Omega, Regalia during seasons where the pressure is pretty significant. And this might be a significant bitter rot season depending on how things shake out with regards to the rainfall. It may be a typical season or it may be a dry season, whichever, but we definitely have bitter rot conditions right now. So just want folks to be on alert with that and use whatever tools in your toolbox to be able to protect your fruit, especially the very vulnerable Honeycrisp. The last thing I want to mention is fire blight. So I do know that some people are struggling with fire blight and the question of what to do right now. So there's a few things you can do. First, let's talk about cutting out fire blight. You want to be very careful of how much you are cutting out. So there's a triage method you want to follow with regards to how to prioritize what you're cutting out and how much. So you want to first focus on young orchards that are basically 0 to 8 years of age that just have a few strikes. So we're talking less than 5. That's usually my rule of thumb there. You can cut those out. However, if you have young orchards that are 0 to 8 years old and they have a lot of strikes, do not cut because the more you cut, the more you're going to encourage new growth, which is going to be vulnerable to fire blight, and it's this vicious cycle. I will say, been there, done that, and it's a headache. So it's hard to do, but just walk away from it. Orchards, older orchards, semi-dwarf orchards, I have a few strikes. Go ahead and cut those out. But if you have older semi-dwarf orchards that have a lot of strikes, again, don't cut them out because the more you cut out of a tree, the more it's going to trigger the tree to produce more shoots. Those shoots are going to be vulnerable. The rule of thumb when cutting out fire blight is you want to cut into 2-year-old wood and leave an ugly stub. Don't cut flush with the trunk. So you want to sort of get the kind of wall off the bacteria away from the central leader of the tree. And so the idea is you'd come back during the winter and cut off that ugly stub. Uh, as far as products you can use, I always advocate Apogee or Kudos. That's the prohexadione calcium. This will shut down the tree's growth and harden off the shoots, limiting shoot blight. I do know I've had a lot of conversations about people not wanting to shut down growth because they're anxious to get the tree space filled in. I will say that's your decision. I am just the messenger of options. So you do what's best for you for your operation. One other thing you could try is Actigard post-infection as well. There has been some data showing, I believe, out of New York possibly, and I think even in Virginia, about the post-infection use of Actigard. For me, and we never quite got it to work real well, so I would say be careful as far as how much and where you're using it. Perhaps maybe just focus on orchards that are on the younger side and maybe don't have as many strikes, but you're worried about wanting to kind of not letting that infection spread. And it just as a reminder that when trees reach terminal bud set, that's when growth stops and all the energy shifts to making big fruit. That's when fire blight should stop. So fire blight should then go dormant in the tree at that point. So we have a few more weeks where we have to kind of worry about fire blight, and especially if we have frequent storm events that might be spreading around that bacteria. Also, as just a reminder that if there is a hail event, you can use an antibiotic such as strep to protect your damaged trees. And make sure you apply that antibiotic as soon as possible after the event. Because the longer you wait, the more that bacteria has a chance of getting into the tree, the more chance you have those wounds healing over and the bacteria getting basically, there's not an option to get at the bacteria. So just be mindful of hail events and then getting out there with your streptomycin spray. Streptomycin is your best option. And just remember, you have 4 sprays a year of strep, so hopefully you have saved one from the bloom time. And I think that's it for my very fast update. And Don, any any questions or thoughts, comments?
No, sounds good. While you were
Okay.
talking, I pulled up the weather station data from the Boyertown weather station.
Yes, uh-huh.
Uh, just under 9 inches at that
Okay,
weather
so
station.
similar.
So yeah,
And you guys, I believe, had you said you had 2.5 inches on Friday, last Friday.
yeah, that was at one of the farms that we were at. Yeah, I don't think the weather station reflects that, but the weather station is down a little bit
I
from
gotcha.
the hill where we're growing. So
Yeah.
awesome.
Okay.
So, Greg,
Oh, wow. A lot of rain.
yeah, a lot of rain.
Well, again, at least with insects, we don't have to worry that much about the impact of rain on the insects. However, saying this, um, you know, there is a rule of thumb that if you get more than 2 inches of rain, you probably should don't think that there is any residue left on the foliage or fruit. Again, it varies. It varies how intensive the rain, how long the rain was, but generally, when you get over 2 inches, don't think that the trees are protected. So let's go to the insects. Well, the most important right now is the situation with codling moth. We are basically right now, and today is Friday, the June the 6th. We are at the timing for the second codling moth application. And again, those timings are based on the degree days. But what happened is 2 weeks ago, because how cold and wet it was, our trap data, which you can see at the FREC website for codling moth, basically showed that there was no flight of codling moth. We checked the traps today, and we went from less than 5 to the average of about 60 per trap in last week only. None of you probably should expect those kind of numbers, but this is indicative what is happening in all of your orchards. Doesn't matter how big pressure the fruit are under. Basically, this is the time to control for the second application to control codling moth. To spray, this is the time. Today, tomorrow, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, anytime you can get to the orchard, rain permitting, you should protect the fruit. This will be basically at the 50% egg hatch according to the old model. I stress the word old because according to the old model, probably we should be done with the flight in the next week or two. Unfortunately, during last 5+ years, we see very extended flight of codling moth, and we still see high numbers, still from the first generation, flying until the end of June. If you have traps in the orchard, now we know it's a good time to spray, but if a week or 2 weeks from now, your numbers are still high, then another application of insecticide, effective insecticide, probably will be warranted or maybe basically needed. So remember about it. Now is a good time. And then 2 weeks from now, probably also if your pressure is high. If your traps showing you that they are no flight, then you probably don't need the third spray. You might not even need this one. Insecticide wise, well, diamides are still very effective products. Diamides include Altacor, Exirel, Besiege, Verdeprim, or Volian Flexi. All of those belong to the group diamides, and using any one of them is a good option at this time. Your other option is using Delegate. But if you're gonna go with diamides, stick with diamides for this entire generation. You can rotate between Altacor, Exirel, Verdeprim, that's perfectly okay, but just use only diamides for this generation and keep Delegate for the later generation or generations, because we might have 2 more generations as we had last year. If you started with Delegate, continue with Delegate and do those 2 free sprays only with Delegates, and then keep diamides for the next generation. The big thing here is, and the reason why I'm stressing this so much is, we do have this severe cases of diamide resistance in some orchards. It's still very low percentage of orchards in Pennsylvania, but it is real, and we really don't want this resistance to become a problem all around the state. So this is important. If you're using diamides, and again, diamides are Altacor, Exirel, Verdeprim, Besiege, Volian Flexi, use products from this group for one generation, and then if you're using Delegate, use for the next generation. If you try to manage your codling moth organically or at a very soft, with a very soft program, this is a time, and I hope you started this few weeks ago, to use Sidex, Madex, or Virosoft. Those are the virus products that works only against codling moth, with Madex and Virosoft also controlling some oriental fruit moth. Sidex works only on codling moth. The big thing about using those virus products is that applications have to be repeated every 7 days. It doesn't matter what rate you use. After 7 days, because of the UV light, the virus become inactive and basically will not work. So the rule of thumb here is that frequent application at the lower rate are better than the higher rate and the less frequent application. So, use the virus. Virus works great if you have mating disruption in your orchard. You might not need diamides or delegate. If you have mating disruption, using virus might do the job. But remember, 7 days. This is the magic number. I mean, depends from the weather. It might be 6, it might be 8. But if you stick with the 7, you basically safe. One thing about the virus products is that virus products will not control leaf rollers. And this is also a timing to control tufted apple bud moth. The diamides and delegate will control tufted. So you don't have to do extra spray to control tufted or oblique in about 2 weeks. But if you're going with the virus, then you probably should do something. Some of your options might be, if you again gonna stay organic, you can do anything that contain Bacillus thuringiensis, something like dipel, or you can use organic version of spinosad and trust. If you're not organic, but you have mating disruption and you don't see any problem with codling moth, but you worry about tufted, then application of Intrepid or any of the generic versions of Intrepid also will do the trick. This is something that will work. Uh, Now, two insects that basically it's too late to control. Plum curculio is one of them. I mean, you cannot control plum curculio really right now. We're basically done with the injury time, with the ovipositional time. Some of the larvae are already in the fruit. And another one that we done is European apple sawfly, especially in organic orchards. European apple sawfly can be devastating. And if you let it build up over the years, it might be a big problem. There is really nothing in organic orchard that can be used to control European apple sawfly. So if you're trying to stay organic or soft program, your best option is to basically go and collect injured fruit. And right now, those fruit will have a big hole in the center of the fruit with a lot of frass with the larva inside. If you can, and for some of you might this be feasible option, for some not, just try to collect those injured fruit and put them in the deep, very deep hole under the ground. So hopefully they will never come back next year. It's too late to control oriental fruit moth right now. The first generation is over, but it is a good time to actually evaluate how effective your control was for the first generation oriental fruit moth. If you are right now in the peach orchard and you don't see flagging or injured in the fruit, it means you did perfect job in controlling first generation oriental fruit moth. It also means that since they are not there and the first generation is over, you probably will not have a problem with oriental fruit moth for the rest of the season. On the other hand, if you go to your peach block and you actually are finding right now flagging on the trees, frequently the larva will be inside. If you open, you can see the tunnel in the growing shoot flagging. Then you know that they are there and you know that you will have to be careful for another 3 generations because we're gonna have another 3 generations of oriental fruit moth this season. Another insect to look for right now is woolly apple aphid. This is the time when they start showing up, and this is the only time when using Movento will actually be very effective. If you start seeing woolly apple aphids on your trees, this is the time to control them with Movento. If you don't see them, but you had a problem last year, well, you might wait a little bit, but remember, Movento will work when the population, when the colonies are building up. Movento will not work when the populations are established and trees are in a bad shape. At that time, your only option will be diazinon. So I would not use diazinon right now. It also will work. The issue is if we get a problem with woolies later during the season, diazinon might be your only weapon that you have to control woolly apple aphids in July or August. So Movento right now, if you know that you need it, keep diazinon for later on. And the last thing I want to mention is Persilla. I mean, we just did on our trees the last application of Surround, but Surround will not do the trick by itself. Right now, it's time to use Admire Pro, Actara, Assail. You can also use Delegate, Exirel, Sivanto, Movento, Verdeprim, Transform. Because, if you let them build up right now, the chance is that you will not be able to control them later on. So this is the time to pay attention to Persilla and control it. Surround can be used for during the entire season. The reason why I said this is the last time is I really don't like surround residue on the fruit during the harvest. And I think that this is, like the last moment when we can still spray, the fruit will still expand, there will be more rain, and the chance that surround will be washed out and will not be visible on the fruit later on is very high. Later on, you surround is still a good option. However, expect that people might ask you what this white residue, what this white stuff on the fruit is. So that's really all I have right now for the insect update. Any questions?
No, that was pretty comprehensive. Thanks, Greg. Um, I think no, I think that's a good picture of where we're at, and I really appreciate you pointing out just the hey, if you're getting 2 inches of rain in a shot, all the hard work you've done over the past couple days putting on a spray just got flushed down the drain. So it's a good reminder for folks.
That's the reality. And again, this
Yeah.
might differ with different pesticides. The systemic one, like Movento, they will still stay there. But most of the surface contact, they will be washed out. Two
And
inches
I'm
is
I'm
a lot
glad
of rain. Go ahead, sorry, Karen.
Sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt. I'm glad you brought that up. Just for folks that are using half sprays or alternate row middle sprays, just be mindful of during this time when fruit are vulnerable for bitter rot because we have the perfect temperatures. They like temperatures at least 75 degrees or higher. And also be mindful of those spray intervals of those half sprays and how long that other side of your tree had been without fungicides. It's just very, very important. It's, you know, this, yeah, we're at a critical time because things are getting established. And this has so far been an excellent year for just about all diseases so far. And are we adding bitter rot to the list? I'm not sure. Possibly.
Happy
So,
plant pathologist.
too much of a good thing. Yeah, I feel like my adrenaline got jacked up on April 1st and it has not lessened. So, too much of a good thing. It's just, folks,
And
from the few people that I've talked to, everyone's being very vigilant, but don't let your guard down, especially since we've had like a couple dry days right now. The next 4 days look like there's some major rain coming through again. So after some dry summers, we kind of have to shift gears in our mind now.
And again, rain is one part here. Another part here is that look at the trees. And if you were spraying a complete and you were okay with 40, 50 gallons and you were getting perfect coverage, I mean, those trees right now are the foliage, the growth, you actually might think about increasing the volume of the spray to get a better coverage. Because if you were okay with 50, let's say in early May, right now, it's probably 75 or maybe even 100 that might be needed to get the same level of coverage. This is something to remember.
Yeah, thank you for saying that. And also make sure your nozzles are functioning appropriately so they're reaching the tops of the trees. I was in an orchard yesterday that had a lot of powdery mildew at the tops of the trees, and so I questioned, were the sprays reaching the tops of the trees? So if you've got time, it may be, if you haven't had your sprayer calibrated, it may be worth checking things out to make sure that what is in your tank is all going on appropriately on your trees. So just some friendly reminders.
Cool.
Don't blame the fungicides. I've got a long list of questions to challenge you with if you start blaming fungicides failing you.
And then before we jump off here, just one last reminder, June 25th, if I
Yes.
recall correctly, is the Freck Field Day. The Fruit Research and Extension Center Field Day is which is how you will find it on Google, and I'll put the link in the episode description. Um, we will have presentations from everyone down at the research center, and I'll have a little table there with some magnets. So get your Dr. Tree Fruit and Don magnet. And
Good stuff.
Yep. Yep, we'll
yeah,
also have Dr. Kayo Brunharo and Dr. Sean Kumar, and I have a student who I'm co-advising on campus who's also going to be down here giving some spiels. So I'm excited. We've got a jam-packed day, and hope to see you there.
it should be really cool. So looking forward to that. And with that, we'll jump
And
off here.
Kerry, moment, can I add something? And Kerry guarantees that this will not be the hottest day of the year.
Mark my words.
Oh boy. Can't wait.
Uh-oh.
Can't wait for
Oh, I think I just
110.
cursed myself.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's it.
I
Jeez.
got to bring out my neck fan and my evaporative cooling gear.
All right. Well, thank you guys so much for jumping on here and doing this. I'll get this edited so folks can listen to it. Say goodbye, everybody.
Goodbye. Good luck.
Bye and good luck.